Hello, everyone. It's good for me to be back. I'm recording myself via the old podcast format where I was just recording it audio, and now I'm doing a visual also, just to prove to anybody who heard my previous podcast Identity that I'm also a real person. I'm not made up. I'm more than a simulated series of noises. And that's what's important in life, is that when you get to the point you recognize that, hey, I am more than just a simulated series of noises. Here I am on your picture. Some people are unlikable, some people are likable. I am maybe unlikable, maybe. But don't tell me that I'm likable if I say that I'm unlikable. This is not part of the topic because I'm starting a new podcast today, even though I'm hosting it in the same place. This is kind of like a continuation of the previous one, which you would be able to recognize, seeing as that it's hosted in the same place. This is like a continuation of sorts of the previous podcast, and I'm very relaxed here. I'm very relaxed. See, I'm just like lounging back, obviously, and that is actually a real forest behind me. I didn't put a fake background. I planted all of that. Those are the trees that I planted in preparation for this podcast. That's why I had to take a couple months of not recording myself, because like those trees were growing in, and I'm like, I need that background. That's essential. The essential workers for as far as my background is concerned. But I can't lean too far back because the lighting, I think I'm more bright if I'm a little closer to it. I'll fix that for next time. But I wanted to bring up the point that this is, I want to try to do it more current as opposed to presented, as opposed to a presentation. Say what you will about YouTube. It's great, of course. YouTube's great, and that's great. But there's still like shortcomings in YouTube, so to speak, or ways that you could define it, where you look at every YouTube video and everybody is doing the same thing. And one thing that everybody basically does is that they edit their videos, even though we live in a relatively more unedited world, which is the point of new art, the new world of art, podcasting, whatever, is more, the more uncensored it is, the better it is. And even then, most people will cut up, especially for something like a reaction video, commentary videos, everybody's cutting it up and then splicing it together so that it's just like continually them talking. And I don't know that that's right, or it's good to do it that way. It's just that it would be an innovation to so I'm explaining why I do something this way. But it would be better if it was all just like me. I had to come up with it. It didn't have, because there's actually a different way that it plays out if you have it in your head that you get to stop whenever you want, that you're like, oh, I can take pauses and stuff. There's a different way it plays out, and I have to be an entertainer in a different way, and even like in a way that's almost less entertaining, because if I have to keep speaking rather than I allow myself a pause, this makes it so that like naturally I have to go naturally more into how I would be saying it, which means like I would have natural pauses, and natural pauses, shit like that, like time that I'd just be thinking about something. But it's like, it's better, it's more current to express your opinions as a continuous flow, or as like a current. But the new podcast that I'm starting is called Currency, and you would have guessed that from the title. I would hope that by the time I put this out into the world, I will have found a logo and title for the podcast. I'm just recording this to hype myself up for that I'm restarting the podcast, like before I have the logo even, but I guess that's just the process. But I'm talking about currency, and talking about how things are current in the world. And like the previous podcast I was doing, the whole thing is called identity, and you could see it as that, like, this is an identity that I'm choosing, but I don't forego talking about what it means to have an identity. I would still continue talking about that. It's just that we have entered a new phase, and the new phase is one about currency, and I want to talk about cryptocurrency during this podcast, something that I am really getting into, and so I'm banking on that it prospers into the future. This is a podcast about cryptocurrency, but it's a podcast more about currency and money. But in my opinion, currency is like a word that is a bridge between time and money. Like it's like a bridge between time and money, and it's just that you have certain vocabulary words that it's like, oh, that's kind of the bridge between the two of those. Currency is like that because it allows you to recognize the present moment. Like currency, or what's happening currently, or what is current, is it's talking about obviously what's happening in the present moment in terms of like what's relevant and what is currently popular. You would look to what is current to understand what's popular, and like the present moment is about presentation. But if you describe the present moment as that, like that it's the present, this infers a more strict set of boundaries around what you're referring to as the present. Strict set of boundaries between the present and the future and the past. So it's like, if you're like, this is the present, this is more, you're referring to something that's more of a presentation, in the way that a presentation is a presenting in the current moment, but it is like a closed interval. A PowerPoint presentation you give is a closed interval, and that's what I'm saying is like, that's closer to what we're describing. We describe the present as opposed to describing it as current. If you're describing the present as currently what's happening, or like something closer to currency, this blurs the lines more between what you're saying is the past, the present, and the future. It blurs the lines a little bit more so that you're not referring to the present as this stopping point where it's like, as a presentation, you understand that it's a closed interval, but it's like a stopping point where you are speaking back out a number of like arguments and resources that you integrated into a presentation that is like reflective of what you know in the present moment. And I guess I'm saying more for like a presentation you'd give at work, like a PowerPoint presentation you'd give at work, is to reflect that you're a good worker, really. Mostly it's to show that you can do your job, but that you are like presently an important factor in the company going forward. Like you give a presentation, the presentation you give is not necessarily so much about evolving the company forward as it is about proving that you belong in the company. That you're like, because the point of giving a presentation is to give a good presentation. And so then you integrate arguments that you like to make a presentation. You pick and choose what arguments you want to put into it, and what you're just like, you have a pile of things you could include in a presentation. If you're like giving a presentation of like numbers for the previous quarter, you're going to show the numbers that match up with the criteria for like the presentation you're supposed to make. But it's kind of like, but the point of it is also to prove that you're a good speaker. Like in the business world, a real, like, maybe the most important part of it is just that you show that you're like, you're good socially, but also if you want to move up in the company, it might involve that you're able to prove yourself to be unique, like a unique speaker. And I'm saying, like, at the level of CEOs, like the CEO of Facebook is like an artist. I was watching her speak. I think that was the CEO, or at least she was, yeah. I was watching the CEO of Facebook speak, and she kind of has like a unique way of talking, but in order to make it to the level of CEO, that means that to climb up the leadership ladder, you're like, you fit the mold of the company, like you're exactly what the company wants for the person who's going to do the most speaking. Because like, as the CEO, it's more important that you're a great speaker, but like a unique speaker, and it's difficult to be a unique speaker. It's difficult to be rare enough to be a CEO. But like the CEO of Facebook is going to end up speaking in a way exactly how Facebook wants, but in a way that Facebook knows the rest of the world sees that speaker and they're like, oh, they have something to say. They're an interesting speaker. They say unique things, or like, and so that makes them a good artist. As far as like the CEO of Facebook is a good artist because she is able to format herself perfectly well to the Facebook environment, like Facebook genre of art, which is a specific genre of art that is within like the genre of art of technology. And so it's important, like if you're at the CEO level, one of the most important things is that as it appears to everybody else, it's like the appearance of you, the way that you sound, it sounds good. Like you use different words than other people. Like you have to be a unique speaker and a good speaker, whatever, like to be a CEO. But the point that I'm making is that the business world is like a artistic rendering that, like, if you're going to be successful in it, and you're going to wear it, like in the business world, you're going to wear uniforms and like business clothes that goes along with that set of art, the same way you would wear like a baseball uniform if you were playing baseball. Like it has its own uniforms, it has its own artistic style. And like in order for you to move up the company ladder in Facebook, you like someone like the CEO, she's proven herself to be good at making good points in the present moment, making good arguments, but like reflecting herself to be relevant at every point in time during the company in order to move up the ladder. But it's almost like she's proving herself to be the most relevant of anybody in that company in terms of what Facebook sees to be relevant. And so like if you're going to be successful in your environment, in a lot of cases it's maybe like you're the most current in the environment at that period of time, or you're like you embody a lot of popularity for what Facebook would see as needing to be popular, or something like that. But I'm saying that like the present moment is very strictly divided because it's more of a stopping point between past, present, strict boundaries, more close interval, future. But current, as opposed to present, is like the boundaries between past and future are more blurred because currency refers to like current in a river, or current in an electric circuit, or currency in money. And like it refers to something that is moving, like the point that I'm making is that the world right now is more including the word currency into their vocabulary, like more than they previously did with the emergence of cryptocurrency. And if like cryptocurrency continues to emerge, the use of currency as a vocabulary term will continue to emerge, and it kind of brings into focus that like cryptocurrency brings into focus that everything is like a currency. Like Waffle House is a currency because it continues to currently exist, prove itself to be relevant. It's not easy to do that. Like it maybe requires the kind of energy that like a river requires to continue moving, but like that something continually moves speaks to it has some energy source pouring into it. That is like if the energy source goes out, then whatever is producing the current is going to fade out. But something that's moving currently is opposed to something that's stopped. And so it's like you using the term current instead of present is a graduation from a vocabulary that causes you to filter the world in a more stopping point oriented way. And like currency, if that term is more adopted, it would cause the world to in this area of like presentation or money or something like that, it cause you to see it more as a flowing object. And like that's really what money is, but that you describe it as money, I would say this is a more outdated term at the point that we're adopting currency into our vocabulary. And it's kind of like currency allows us to be more intelligent in the area, like seeing what money actually is. Money is a less intelligent term, and money is a term for a time when people aren't in control of the idea of money, aren't in control of what it means to have money, but cryptocurrency makes it so that people are the banks. And the more that that happens, the more that money becomes decentralized, meaning that it's distributed more evenly to more parties, more people. So it goes from an area of more generalization to specification when it's going from centralization to decentralization. Centralization is generalization. And so what's happening with currency, if it continues to emerge and continues to be adopted as a term for money, is that this is a more intelligent recognition of the idea. And it's more intelligent because practically the idea is being given to more people, being distributed to lots of different people. And it's that recognition that kind of goes along with us calling this thing to be currency. But this is terms evolve this way where we change our vocabulary but money is more a term for when that's controlled by central banks and central governments. And as that becomes decentralized, it's kind of like the idea itself is given to everybody. And yeah. And then sometimes I make a point and then I'm like, oh yeah, I was gonna make that point, wasn't I? And then I'm like, oh, I made it. And then I feel like discontinuing or something like that. But you just gotta keep it flowing, There's nothing quite like currency. But I'm saying that I'm staring right at the microphone instead of at the camera. Oh God, I'm so unprofessional. I'm not even looking at that thing. And whatever, it's just but I'm saying that people on YouTube, they'll edit the shit out, and it's time to do something a little bit different there, because there are different things you can do on YouTube as just a creator of content that are already different, that are still different from what everybody else is doing on YouTube, because you don't have to just innovate content in the area of oh, there's this market of top 10, 15 creepiest places, and nobody's covered that before. You don't have to innovate just by finding a new thing to talk about. You can innovate by doing something different. And even though everybody makes this big push to be more unfiltered, everyone's still splicing all their shit, and it's still presentation instead of currency. But the future is more currency, is what I'm deciding to stake my reputation on. So hopefully cryptocurrency does well into the future, or else I'm screwed. I look like an idiot. But to some degree, it's not like I already have so much power and influence that that it would be her. I'm not up very high that I would fall very far. And that's just a fact of life. That's just a fact of life, that if you aren't already very influential in any way, that you don't have very far to fall. And what they say is that what comes up must come down, and it's whatever. It's fun to try to be fun. It's fun to try to be funny. Sometimes I wonder if funny is out the door. Does anybody care about funny anymore? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure, I'm not sure that funny is what you would want to be going forward to be relevant. But I'm saying Waffle House is a currency, and it's a currency because it continues to prove itself true and real in the present moment over and over and over again. And I'm saying that's not necessarily easy to do, because energy continually has to flow into it. But Waffle House is like a cryptocurrency, because energy has to continue to flow into Waffle House, and the Waffle House network of however many that there are. Let's say there's 1,200 of them, but that's a whole network that would be similar to a network of 1,200 people who are holding Bitcoin. And there's this is the community of people who hold Bitcoin is kind of a Waffle House, because everybody who holds the cryptocurrency, let's use Bitcoin as an example, is a node in the network. So they're like a point of reference, the same way that if there's 1,200 Waffle Houses, every Waffle House is a node in the network of Waffle Houses. And it's like cryptocurrency and the emergence of it brings into light that that every company is like a stock, and or like it exists as a stock and it exists as a currency. And to some extent, if cryptocurrency continues to emerge, I would imagine that it would crash the stock market or something, or take away from the stock market to some extent, because it is a whole new stock market that's there, and there are new stocks being added to it all the time. If it continues to gain volume, the same way like the Amazon River has volume, if the entire market of cryptocurrencies continues to gain volume, because it is like water as opposed to like land, cryptocurrency, it's like it gains volume like a river or an ocean would, and because you have to describe a market cap of a cryptocurrency as being in terms of the volume that's held, and like it has volume and it's losing volume when people trade away their Bitcoin for some other cryptocurrency. And but like I'm not just talking about cryptocurrency, I'm just kind of like talking about the idea of currency during this podcast. And I'll want to get into electromagnetism for one, because electromagnetism, I want to talk about electric currents and why those are related to cryptocurrency and that kind of thing. So like I will have a scientific bent where I'm talking about electromagnetism, and electromagnetism is a kind of forgotten area of science. Like it's not as sexy and glamorous as other things like particle physics. I mean, as sexy and glamorous as you can be scientifically, like it's not like the study of the planets or like visible spectrum, even though visible spectrum is made up of electromagnetic light. But like I'm talking more about electrical currents. Like electricity is not, it's like it's so simple that people wouldn't like necessarily want to think about that a lot. Like, oh, electricity and electric currents, it's just kind of like a simple thing. But I like electricity as a scientific topic because it is like a gateway to other scientific areas, because it's more straightforward, and it has a nice simplistic elements to it, like understanding the way that a current electricity goes through a current is more simple than other scientific things, but like it's still like scientific and profound and stuff like that. But like the study of electricity is basically what I'm talking about during this podcast. I'm talking about things that are current, and the sun is working against me because you have to have good lighting all the time or something. Like that's going to, because people will tune out because shadow is cast. I guess somebody might. There is a point at which people would be like, oh, that's the lighting was bad, and so I didn't like the unprofessionalism. There is some amount of people that would tune out as a result of that, but it's like you can't account for everybody. But you can put yourself in the best possible position, follow regular practices, like, oh, well, at least have the lighting be this good. You have to meet certain standards, so you can't be way out in right field for one area of it that it's like, oh, if the camera wasn't even on me, then that would be a deterrent to my efforts, I would say. But Waffle House is a currency because it continues to be current and money flows in and out of it. It's a currency. They produce a certain product and you exchange in that currency if you go and buy what Waffle House has to offer. It's not too different from going and buying Cardano. Buying from Cardano and what Cardano has to offer, where you exchange something else. Say you exchange US dollars for Cardano, you receive Cardano, but if you exchange US dollars for Waffle House waffles, you receive those waffles, you receive that product, and then you hold that, except that it's food, and you just get rid of it. So it's not really There's different kinds of assets. Restaurants offer assets that you get rid of, but like you use them as fuel. This is like the same way you'd use gasoline for your car, like you use food as fuel. So you use food as fuel, folks, for, look at, you know why I say for is because I got my golf clubs right near me. Let me invite you into my abode. This is my 4-iron. Nothing like it. Yeah, no, you go out there, you hit the links. Be sure to bring your 4-iron with you. That's what we got here. Standard length. Now you've seen the entire thing. Boom. You know what you do with this bad boy is you hit the links and you place a golf ball in front of you and then you hit it in a certain direction. So, but you know, life isn't easy. There are many challenges. Not everything is a walk in the park. I don't make that up. And the thing about Waffle House being a currency is that you can exchange in it, and wow, isn't that something? That when you exchange in the Waffle House currency, but like it has its own, I'm saying that it's a currency like it's its own money the same way a cryptocurrency is, but like the emergence of cryptocurrency kind of, what's one of the important things about it is that it's like if you had a whole market of national currencies like US dollars, yen, pesos, euros, you know, all the money that you would know if you're an American, like pesos, euros, whatever is beyond like the 4 that everybody knows, that doesn't matter. Forget about it. Just to prove to yourself the point that there's different currencies, national ones, you just need to know 4, and you're like, oh yeah, definitely you can, of course you can exchange pesos into US dollars, but then there's plenty more than that. But what examples do you need besides once you know the concept? And so there's like pesos in the world, and pesos is like a Bitcoin, but like a cryptocurrency market is like if you had a market full of national currencies, but what's different about cryptocurrency is that all of these currencies are in the same place and they're in one market, like it's a stock market. It would be like if all national currencies were available on a stock market and they were all just increasing in value all the time. It's like if national currencies were stocks, is what cryptocurrency does, is part of why it is so transformative, is because it's like this giant candy store of assets that you could buy, that you could invest in, that are likely to increase, but they're like they're increasing a lot right now because they're newly created as new technology that we're only currently realizing day after day the value of this new technology. Like we're slowly uncovering information about the value of the technology and how significant it is. As we slowly do that, the value of these currencies increase. But like I wouldn't make it as boring as just talking about currency or talking about money. But the thing is, like, money is becoming this point, is like cryptocurrency is making it so that money is like a pop cultural deal. Like money is becoming pop cultural to some extent, but that would make sense seeing as that currency is a word for popularity, relevance. But the adoption more and more of a term like currency, it brings into light the currentness of money, but it kind of just, like, cryptocurrency is making it so that money is like information, because cryptocurrency is like an emergence of a whole separate internet that does for money what the current internet does for information. Like the idea is that it makes it available to everybody, but like the same way that information currently is available to everybody and becomes less, like becomes less valuable because everybody has it. Like money can become more a thing of the past if cryptocurrency takes over. Currency as an idea takes over and allows all of us to understand money to just be flowing everywhere. And but like that everybody can become a bank and have control over money. If that does happen, then national banks don't have control over that anymore, and money becomes like everywhere to the point that we're like, oh, we don't need that anymore. But this is something that we've been excited about since the 1960s, really. So it's like, I must have picked the wrong time of the day to do this, because look how dark my face is now. I'm such a failure. God damn it. I'm like 25 minutes into a podcast and I'm making the point that I can't stop and change things, and there's shade over my face, whatever. But what I'm saying is that cryptocurrency, if it does what it's supposed to, is just like this giant interconnected internet where different currencies along the circuitous lines of the network, blockchain kind of acts as a electrical current, or like the copper wire that the current flows through. Blockchain acts as that, and different cryptocurrencies perform different functions in the entire network, this like separate internet, and they perform different functions. Like one cryptocurrency is like a resistor, another one is like a capacitor, another one is like a transformer, that kind of thing. The same way that there are these stopping points across large networks of where current is flowing in the world, same way that there's these transfer points, interfaces. Cryptocurrencies are like different interfaces that perform different functions. And so the race is which function is the most valuable and which has the most utility, which cryptocurrency is involved too much in all the rest of them that it's like we can't do without it as far as the system is concerned. And like if it does work out, it'll become really big. It'll become like a whole new internet that will render money useless, sort of, if it's given to everybody, to the extent that information is rendered useless with the internet. And that's so like you wouldn't say that information is rendered useless necessarily by the internet. So like whatever way you think of the internet or think of what information is now as a result of what the internet did to it is the way that you would think about money. And what, like, if in a potential future where cryptocurrency renders money more useless, but like currency is has a lot of utility, and currency has utility as a word the same way that money does. Money has a lot of utility, and it has a lot of utility. Like you can buy $15 of something will buy you $15 of anything. That's a huge amount of utility. Like what your $15 can do for you, it has many uses because it can buy you $15 of like anything that isn't completely off limits. And it's like currency has utility. You understanding the concept of currency is like a recognition of the utility of things, but like it kind of makes it so that you recognize the past, present, and future. When the lines become blurred more so between the past and the future, that like the thing you're calling the present is more current, so that the past is flowing into the future, and you just like intelligently recognizing this is a recognition where you're taking down authorities that strictly defined the present moment before and then transforming them into less strictly defined authorities when you describe what's currently happening as current as opposed to present. This allows allows society or all of us to come to a better conclusion about the relationship between time and money, like how we say time is equal to money, like because it allows us to see how time flows constantly the same way that money does. But like cryptocurrencies are always fluctuating the same way that like In the same way that water has currents and different levels of it are fluctuating all the time, and like the price is always changing, is an important facet of it, and is like attractive characteristic why people go into it is because it's always changing, and so there's risk involved in investing in any currency at any one time, and so it's like always changing and always fluctuating the same way that, and like to describe what money actually is you're describing how it is going everywhere all the time. And the more that you become a bank in cryptocurrency terms, the more assets that you acquire in cryptocurrency, the more that you recognize your need to move them to different wallets and different exchanges. But like in order to accumulate the most currency or the most money, you need to give yourself the freedom to move the money the most places. But it's like the more that you're harnessing your potential for utility with the money that you have is the more that you can turn that into more utility. But it's like the amount that you're allowing yourself to deal in the currency, the amount that you're allowing yourself to, you're giving yourself free reign to accrue more of it is the more, but is the more utility you have, is the more that is the less that you're restricting yourself from the amount of use cases that you have, or like the less that you restrict your own potential and utility is the more that you would, in terms of cryptocurrency, move the currency in lots of different places. But like the more that you become a bank is the more that you like become God over money, the way that banks are, where banks take money and they move it all over the place. But like people becoming God over money, as opposed to it being centralized in banks, people becoming God over money causes you to see the currentness of it more like that, like, and causes you to, through experience, understand how you're moving it everywhere, because it's relatively more stagnant when you give the authority of money to national banks to like decide how your money is going here. Because as long as your money is just in a bank account, this is a lot more relatively more stagnant way of understanding what money is doing. But like if you are God over it, like you have the potential to be with cryptocurrency, like the more that you're a bank, because it becomes more decentralized and given to everybody, is the more that you recognize the free-flowing nature of money, how it is like time. But the other point I wanted to make is that this is like a partisan thing, money, and we've been trying to render money useless in the way I was just describing for a while. Like since the 1960s, people have been, but probably since before that, but especially since the 60s, people have been hating money, like, and they hate it with the same arguments and the same vehemence as they do today. Like the same energy and the same words that come up about people's hatred for money is like the same today as it was in the 60s, where people are like, they hate America, or like this way of doing things that's completely driven by success. And like people, because around the 1960s, it became popular to understand the need for success is not as important, but like with the influence of psychedelic drugs, and the more that permeated the culture, the more that people are spitting back out as a result of the influence that they received through drugs that they were taking. They spit back out more and more, or like frequent speech more and more in the direction of saying that money is a negative thing. And we've been saying that money is a negative thing for a while. I think that right now, for whatever reason, because money is becoming one of the few things that you can look to that's like a pop cultural topic, cryptocurrency right now, it's hard to recognize what is pop cultural right now, like who are the pop cultural figures. It's graduated to this point where we're like, the only people we recognize to be pop culture figures are like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. Like you have to be at that level to be popular culture influencer. Like obviously there's lots of levels of it, where there's a lot of YouTube personalities are also pop culture influencers. It's just that like in the 80s and 90s, we could unite behind a figure or a band or a celebrity a lot easier than we can now. At this point, in order for us to all be on the same page about like a popular figure, all agree. It has to be someone at the level of like Bill Gates or Elon Musk. And the point I'm making is that pop culture really took a bullet to the head in like the last couple years, especially, where everybody kind of came to terms with that. Like even stand-up comedians were like 10 years ago attributed the ability to speak on what was popular, but nowadays they are less and less attributed that ability because there's a lot of indignance across people to say that like, well, you don't actually know what you're taught. Like, it's not like anybody actually knows, and this is true. This is like a prevailing truth. Nobody actually knows anything necessarily, and as far as the media is concerned, like they weren't there, you know. They're reporting on a shooting that happened on the corner of some intersection like a few hours after the fact, and they're giving you a story, but they weren't there when it happened. And like their news stories are like that, but they're professing to know exactly what happened for something they didn't see. And like your opinions and your speculation on things, this is not knowledge. And how do you know? And I think it will get to the point even that we're like physicists. How do you know? How do physicists know? I was watching a video of some famous physicist. His name is Sean Carroll. I think he's famous. I feel like I had seen him before, but he was just talking about that physics says entropy is like one of the main ideas, like one of the most important things. Like entropy is, I'll talk about that in a different video, maybe, about entropy. But this podcast, I'm going to have guests on because I'm videotaping it, and that's more interesting, as long as, and like, I don't have to be responsible for the entire thing all on my own. I don't plan on ending this one, that I'm going to like have an ending point the way that I was ending the identity podcast that I did, entitled it that way as. I'm not like, I don't foresee an ending point. I guess I could change it the same way I changed the last one from identity to currency, but I feel like I'll want to do this topic for a while. And yeah, I'm saying how money has become like, because there's few things that you can look to pop culturally. Like you have to, in order for everybody to be on the same page, we have to look to like Elon Musk. We're like, oh, we all have an opinion on that guy because he's so far up here or whatever. But cryptocurrency is something that we can all point to and have an opinion on. And it kind of goes, it's kind of like we're reaching a culmination in our description of money that started in, or that's kind of been around since the 60s, where we're like, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, money sucks. And that seems to be a common theme across everybody. Everyone agrees money is shit. Like, oh, money's the worst ever. But like current cryptocurrency has a lot of benefits, where it's like, in the ways I just described, that it can render money useless, but it does that by like, even in third world countries, they would instantly have access to the like a higher level of technology money that's being described by cryptocurrency that even people in the West have access to, and like people in richer countries have access to. But it's like, I think that the dividing point between rich and poor is something that's more into focus now. And it's like, even like politically, it's hard to see what the main topics are, like what's dividing people. I think money is one of the main things that's dividing people. And like the example of Elon Musk is something that divides people, where it's like, oh, you hate him because money. And there's lots of people that make money, they treat it superstitiously, where they're like, oh, Elon Musk must be doing something bad. Like we see an example of a guy who has lots of money, like, oh, scary, bad. And that's because we live in a world that hasn't gotten past money, or like hasn't gotten past it enough to say that like, oh, it's not necessarily the case that is what's driving everything he does. It's like this heavily stigmatized topic because we're afraid of it, and everybody spits out like that they're scared of it, and that it's like this horrible dividing thing. And I don't know. So it's become this partisan issue, but like I feel like that's the gripe across everybody. That's like that's an easy opinion for everybody to have, the same way that it was like easy to have a liberal set of opinions circa 2009. Like the easy thing for everybody to say is like, oh, money is shit. And I feel like we're reaching a culmination of sorts with the emergence of cryptocurrency, to the point that like this is like a really important world topic, but like we might even move past it to say like some other thing is one of the main governing problems in society. So I like that besides money, because money is always like the overarching theme that we're always talking about for a long time, or like the evils of it. But so my opinion on money is that like there's positive opinions to have about it. I don't think it's really that evil. I don't think, like, stop characterizing everybody who has money, and I don't have a ton of money necessarily. Like I'm not like saying because I have money, or like I'm pissed about that. I'm saying like, why is everybody so I'm defending myself. Why does everybody need to characterize having lots of money as evil thing, or like that's what makes them smart. That's what makes them intuitive about a person. Is like, oh, you know, what's at the root of that is that they have lots of money, and so that now defines and decides every action that person carries out. And that's what people do with Elon Musk. Just because he receives the title richest guy in the world or whatever, people are like, well, what I know because I'm intelligent is that at what you know that's at the root of that is money, and that's always bad. And it's just like there are better there. It's not. It's stigmatizing and unintelligent to define people to this one thing, and like that's when you know we have a superstitious relationship to it. But you know, I made my points and videotaped all of it, and I came across as friendly. You know, I'm your friend, of course, and it's like me videotaping myself. You know that I'm a great person to be around. I'm very agreeable and fun, and it's just that you would want to hang out with me. Definitely, you would, because look at who I am on this camera. If that's not enough to tell you who I am, then I think you're living your life wrong. And it's not like everything you do doesn't have some amount of emotional manipulation in it, no matter what, or anything like that. I'm just a friend of the people, and that should be obvious. And I'm sorry if you don't see it that way, then then whatever. It's a beautiful day. I'm in here recording a podcast. There's a forest behind me. I'm on the second floor. But thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. There will be more of these in the future. I will have guests on. Such a thing will happen. Such is the way things will play out in the future. I will talk about currency and other topics and what have you. And but thanks for listening. See you next time.